Now that that's dry, let's take a piece of tracing paper and cover up the top portion of it, because I want to put a little splatter technique on that. And we have a nice messy mix here on the palette to work with for our splatter technique. Start with some very subtle textures. That's a little too dark. We want to work from the background very subtly. So let's add a little bit more water. Now it doesn't matter a lot for this particular purpose that you have the flow release and stuff in it, because these little splatters are going to pretty much stay where you put them. That's going to work. Okay, so just the background begin to build up that kind of random texture. Now as you get up closer to the foreground, let's get a little more serious with the amount of splatter and the color. Let's get a little more blue in that. Now let's really get serious here in this area, because we're going to develop some rather serious grass in this area. Just dragging across this mess on the palette right now. We can get a little more blue, or we can get a little more of the burnt sienna. I've always liked this technique, because one thing, it's about the only way I get very loose with a with a painting, and it's just some neat things happen sometime. Now, if I put too much on there, again, take a Kleenex and just kind of blot up what you don't want. But we've got quite a bit of texture developed in the foreground there, so you wash just a little bit more variety or something across here somewhere. It's a little too uniform. Need a little messiness in an old grassy field like that. We get it too clean and pretty looking. Now if you put the washes thin enough with just water without the flow release, it works fine. It's just that if you want to put a nice soupy wash on there, that you're going to have a flow release so the water does what you want it to do. Yeah, that's looking kind of interesting. Let's put a few strokes with a rigor of kind of dark blades of grass in some of these places before we start coming over it with some lighter stuff. Break up some of those straight lines. I don't know, I think we've got enough. Now let's mix up some of the gesso with, let's add just a little bit of the yellow ochre to it. What I want to do is I want to show you how you can come back over it with a transparent wash, and it virtually hides the fact that it is opaque. So let's put a few kind of bold strokes across here to break up those dark spaces. We can work this as long as we need in order to break up those larger areas and pull some of that yellow that you see in those flat areas of grass up there down into these darker areas. I'm going to take a splatter brush and the splatter technique, and I'm going to put a little of that yellow splattered over this area. That'll soften it a little bit. Okay, let's let that dry a minute and look at it after it's dry. Okay, now that that's dry, let's demonstrate another attribute of acrylic. That is going to be to add an element or a couple of elements to this painting. And it's going to show you how you can, by painting with acrylic on canvas like this, you can come back and you can change the painting considerably. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just arbitrarily decide that I want a couple of trees here in the middle ground, fairly major tree trunks, to add to this. I will locate them a little bit with a pencil so that I kind of know where they're going to be. And let's make them a pretty substantial trees, come down like that. That'll be enough to get started drawing. And okay, so we have the trees standing there. Now before I go ahead and paint over this with some white gesso, which is going to take it back to the same kind of surface that we started on, I'm going to think in terms of some leaves and some shadows that's going to be cast here on the ground. Now, if those are oak trees, there's going to be some oak leaves that has fallen on the ground underneath them. So I want to put that on there first so I don't have to try to avoid the the tree trunks that I'm going to paint in later. So I just put the protective paper over the background trees and the sky again, and I'm going to come in here and mute that burnt sienna a little bit. I don't want it to look too red in here, but it's just brownish red leaves, and so I'm going to try splattering some of those underneath that tree. That's not red enough. I want to get a little of that red color. It picks up on the red color in the background trees and there. Now everyone knows that eventually the dead leaves fall off of trees, but beyond that we needed some kind of texture in there to make it look like those really were trees. And at that, don't even have to wait for that to dry, I don't think. I think I'm going to add a shadow in there. Those trees would cast a shadow. And let's assume the light is coming pretty much from this direction. So let's go in there right over those leaves and do something that might represent a tree shadow. We don't want to just draw a tree on the ground. We want something as believable as a shadow, but we don't want to be too continuous. Break it a little bit so it doesn't get too. It's down right at the base of the tree. We make sure we got and it's in grass, so it's going to be a rough kind of a texture. That's going to work. Let's give that just a minute to dry. Okay, let's clean off the palette a little bit. Give us room to mix some other colors, and again the parts that are dry, just mist a little bit of water on it, and then take a paper towel or a Kleenex, in this case a Kleenex, and first we'll deal with just some gesso because I want to define the trees, and I'll come back. I guess you might say I'm drawing with a brush because I'm going to define the trees. I'll just use this number 4 round I've got here and put some gesso, just plain old white gesso on the palette, and pretty much define where those trees are going to be. Now I could make this gesso layer fairly smooth, but since this is tree bark anyway, it might just enhance the texture a bit if I'm not that careful about that and let it get a little bumpy and a little irregular. So let's let that dry for a few minutes. Now the gesso that we use to define the tree is dry. I'm going to use a fairly small round brush, and what we want to do is we want to paint on that just like we did the white canvas to begin with. I'm going to first put a light wash of yellow ochre just to warm the thing up, particularly on the sunny side of the tree. Put a little bit of the red in it. And this is like some of the other work we did on the other painting. We need to work in layers and dry it. If we try to work too far into the wet paint here, it begins to get a little muddy. So we'll go ahead and not get in too much of a hurry, and we'll get some stuff on there, and then we'll dry it a little and go from there. Now, if we paint this down too much in value, we can come back and lighten it as we've already found. So we can work back and forth with these values with acrylics. As a matter of fact, it's kind of fun doing that, and it's kind of reassuring to know that you're not in trouble if you're getting the wrong value, that you have a way to fall back and regroup and come at it again. Okay, as the paint is dried, it's kind of moved in some awkward shapes. So I want to mix up the color of the grass area around it in what is actually translucent. It's not not opaque, but it'll break up some of those dark areas, and when it dries it'll match the surrounding area. I believe our tree is ready now to go back into. So using the same washes we were using before, I think probably leaning more toward a kind of a gray here. We'll go back and begin to work these shapes. Yeah, I think what I'll do now is to mix up some opaque. It's about the right shade of gray. A little bit more splatter in there of this, not of that red like the leaves over there. And of course, blot up a few of those that don't look too natural. I believe for the purposes we were doing this particular demo that we're about finished. We could keep tinkering with the textures. One other thing I want to do is in this foreground area, demonstrate one more time. I have deliberately painted in that translucent part a little bit light. So what I want to do is to bring a transparent wash, and I'll put a little flow release on it. So I believe that's enough for this demo. I think we've made our point and we've demonstrated the technique.